Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cube's webinar today. We're discussing how to unleash the power of AI and data analytics with Cube and Delphi. We have some exciting speakers with us today. We have David and Michael from Delphi, and then Tony and Igor from Cube. And before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few quick notes. You can ask us any question in real time. Simply enter your question and click submit. And then we'll get to those during our Q&A portion of the webinar. We'll be using Cube Cloud for our demos today. And the recording of this workshop will be available on demand on Cube's events pages just right after the show. And lastly, if you have any feedback, we would love to hear. Just tell us how we did. You can email me directly at nathan@cube.dev. And today, what we'll be discussing is what is Cube, what is Delphi, and how they work together, how AI helps deliver business insights to end users, why the semantic layer is crucial for Delphi, of course, some demos, and then a live Q&A session. So without any further hesitation, I'm welcoming Igor to kick things off. Welcome, Igor.
Thank you, Nathan, and hi, everyone. And well, what is the best way to start? Well, definitely with some demos. So let me share a window I have right here. And well, this is my Slack window. This is where I spend a good portion of my work time every day. And well, sometimes I just wonder, why can't I just get some insights from here? Why can't I just start asking questions to some mastermind and get some results? So this is what I'm gonna do. Wouldn't it be cool if I were able to say, hey, well, Delphi, what is the quantity our company sold in 2023 this year by location? And let's see if anything happens. Well, there's a new thread, which is fine. Well, my team has asked this before. Well, I need to get a fresh reply. So just continue with my question. Delphi is processing something, and let's see what happens. So I can literally feel like some bytes and are being crunched right now. And let's see if we got any result. Should be here anytime soon, and yes, we do. So it looks like we've got a pretty elaborate reply to the question with list of cities, top locations, like top 8 of them. We have quantity sold here, and we've got a nice chart that summarizes this. Wow, ain't it cool? And I think that I've got a few other options to go here to go with this result, but let me stop sharing at this point because probably this is already exciting enough, and tell you about the things that power this demo and the things that might be powering the experiences, the data analytics experiences supercharged with AI and connected to a semantic layer. So let's talk about these tools. And one of them is Cube. Well, I'm from a company that builds Cube, which is an open source semantic layer for data apps. And if you wonder how we came to the whole idea of building this and what is the mission that drove us there, it is quite simple. So Cube is intended to be a building block, a tool that powers the data-driven application that you're building. And with Cube, we'd love to make sure that the data that you store in cloud-based data warehouses, or well, actually any database that speaks SQL, it is accessible and consistent. So with Cube, you can deliver the data to any downstream tool, be it a BI tool, a data notebook, or any front-end application that visualizes your data or any novel, say, AI experience. And that data would be consistent, and not only consistent in terms of how metrics are calculated, but also consistent in terms of freshness. So there's no gap in freshness in the data that you see in a BI tool and in a data app that you have. And we came to the idea of building Cube to solve for the consistency because, well, right now many data teams are in a situation they have to wire up lots of data sources. Well, maybe a couple of data warehouses, maybe some blob storage with Parquet files somewhere, to a number of downstream applications because there are different teams and individuals and companies that are demanding that they need to have their own customized data experience so they can derive insights from it. So the end users, the customers, they might want to have their web-based application with data, and the internal users might be well used to exploring data in the dashboards and the BI tool, et cetera, et cetera. And Cube basically solves this problem of the data chaos with its semantic layer. So you can think of Cube as something that sits in between your data sources and data consumers and delivers the data to the latter, which is consistent. And there are 4 pillars in Cube, like these layers that are data that control data modeling, the security of your data, caching, and there are APIs to deliver the data. But the most interesting part here in the context of this webinar is that Cube provides the connectivity options with its APIs that allow data to be delivered to all kinds of downstream tools, and which is the most exciting part, to such tools like Delphi, as it said on the slide, like the tools that serve as your AI agents and that can provide customized novel experiences for end users. And if you're wondering at this point, like, hey, but what's the bigger picture? What is the way to envision a semantic layer within your broader data stack? Well, it is exactly that. So I won't be repeating everything that you see currently on the slide, but the thing is, the semantic layer plays really well with the rest of the tools in your data stack, well, or maybe modern data stack if you prefer that. And it can be reading data from the data warehouse, delivering it to all kinds of downstream tools, and also interfacing with the observability and discovery tool that you have, the data that's in the data warehouse that obviously would be transformed using some tool upstream. And Cube in turn can be controlled by data orchestration tool that you have. So this is Cube, and this is a question for you. So I wonder where you stand right now, and do you think that large language models and, well, AI agents in general can be used as an interface to a semantic layer like the one that Cube provides? And with this question, let me let David jump in and tell you about Delphi.
Hi, everyone. I'm David. I'm co-founder and CEO at Delphi Labs. It's really great to be here, and thanks, Cube, for having us. Let's meet Delphi. So what is Delphi? Delphi is the AI interface for data, but a bit about our story. Michael and I have both led data teams of different sizes across different industries. And so we've got a really good lived experience about what problems kind of have always affected data teams. And self-serve and the interface between data teams and their stakeholders has always been a problem. And we've been there for self-serve BI and many other forms of this and different attempts to solve it. But we've never seen it solved, and it's something that we've always wanted to see solved. So if you think about what we want to do and what we believe everyone at a company should have safe and easy access to data. And they shouldn't have to be of a certain skill level. They shouldn't have to know how to write array formulas in Excel or how to write SQL. They should just be able to ask a question and get a good and safe answer. That's our mission. So why have we built on semantic layers like Cube? So you may have seen other generative AI tools in the data space. Those tools are often doing text to SQL. Now, why aren't we doing that? As people who have really good experience in data, and what we've seen is that trust in data is everything. If your tool or your team produces output that's not trusted, it's very quickly not used. And so where a large language model or an AI agent in general was to generate SQL, we believe and have seen that it won't produce reliable results. It guesses, it gets it wrong. This is where the semantic layer comes in. The semantic layer is maintained and created by your data team or your engineering team, and it provides that mapping of real-world objects to data structures, whether that's columns and tables in a database or files in a data lake. And what this means is that the meaning of data is governed in the semantic layer. It's defined in the semantic layer. And it allows for this to be transparent and consistent. It's not recreated every time that the LLM is queried. In addition to that, the semantic layer gives Delphi some superpowers. One of the things that Delphi has is that it has a model of the world in the semantic layer. So if a user asks a question about data that's not in the semantic layer, Delphi can say it doesn't know, because that's what a data team would do if it asked about data it didn't have. And we have this ability to have this rich workflow where we frame the question, much like an analyst would to a stakeholder. We can offer semantically similar pieces of work or questions that have already been answered and validated. And we have this wonderful feedback loop where we can use the metadata from an organization to make Delphi better over time. Today, we offer GPT-4 as one of our models, Claude from Anthropic, and we're investigating open source models and other big proprietary models in the future. So now over to Tony for the demo.
Awesome. Let me get my screen shared up here. Right. So we're going to look at how we're going to build this foundation, this semantic layer, and build the world that Delphi can then tap into to answer questions. So we're going to start in Cube Cloud in an interface you guys might be familiar with in a SQL editor. So we've got our Schema Explorer on the left-hand side. We've got the ability to query our tables. This is connected live to a demo Postgres database with some e-commerce data. We've got our normal columns and fields and rows in our table here. Fields like order ID, quantity, price, and a date field for created at. Let's take a look. Another one, orders. That's important. So we've got something called an order number. I don't know if that's important. We've got the status of the order, a couple of dates where it's completed at, when it's created at, product ID, and then we've got a users table as well. So users have a city. They're based in a company. They're in a company. They have an age and a gender and a first name and a date they're also created at. So we can see there's kind of some makings of a star schema here and a data model where we can build on top of it and start to extract the business data from this database. So when you import your data into cloud, or sorry, when you connect to data from Cube Cloud, you're starting off with the cubes that are pre-generated. You can customize those here in the YAML code or in the JSON code, depending on your flavor of preference. But we have basically a cube for each of the tables in our database. So this one, for example, users, we can see some of these fields look the same. We've used the semantic layer here to define both what field they are in the database and then the type of data that they are. So a string in this case, a number in this case. And we've been able to do some things like custom calculations and start to define the business logic that goes into augmenting our data source with meaningful data for our business to query later down in our data apps layer. So for example, we've got the date form or the state format that comes in that's a little wonky. Our users probably aren't going to be querying in this format. They might be more familiar with the normal state abbreviation. So we're going to use the native SQL dialect here of Postgres. Whatever your data source is connected to, we're going to use that layer or that language to create those calculated fields or these custom formulas in order to calculate that metric, or that dimension in this case. And we've got a couple other formulas here with concatenate, even some date math, where we're calculating tenure years, so how long a customer or a user has been in our database. Over on line items, right away we can see some joins. So this is defining the relationship between this cube and the other cubes in our model. So for example, this is the line items table. It has a relationship to products. It takes the product ID from this cube, from this actual file here, and relates to the products cube on its ID field. And we've got some, the makings of some metrics here where we're looking at the quantity and the price. That's going to make our extended price. That's going to be something we're going to want later when we're trying to total up our total sales. And that's going to be something we're going to want to add up as a sum, so we can designate the type for that. And finally, let's look at orders. So we've again got some joins to show relationships to other cubes in our model. And we're able to take, say, that extended price that I just showed you on the line items table and bring that in to sum it up for a total order value. And we can call this order value, and that is something that can be consistent across all of your applications downstream. They'll all use the same calculation for order value here if you're defining it in Cube. And then we can make some even more, maybe some business-friendly metrics or some important KPIs for your business that are, maybe you have a KPI on average order value. You can calculate that number here, and just in one place, share that same definition across all your downstream tools. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this might look like in our playground. So we've got sales order count. We want to see that by the order status, and we'll see that over time. And this is Cube running against the database in live. It's actually not accelerated with any pre-aggregation, so this is live against Postgres, and it's showing us a trend of that data over time. And that's what Cube's doing behind the scenes is it's writing a query. It will accept a few different interfaces. So there's the SQL, the GraphQL, and the REST APIs. So in this case, if we want to use the REST API, we can fashion a JSON query that looks like this in order to generate the data that went into that chart. And this JSON format is exactly what Delphi is generating when it queries against Cube. So there's GraphQL. We can see that same query in a different format, and the generated SQL. So if we were to run this from a BI tool or something that used a SQL interface, this is exactly the format that we would need in order to retrieve the data from Cube. it's a great interface to get a quick start on integrating it with those downstream tools. So speaking of those downstream tools, how do we get connected? On our overview page, we have our 3 APIs here, the SQL API, the REST API, the GraphQL API. You can see our endpoint here. We're going to focus on the REST API. This is our endpoint to tap into this cube. And then if we click on the connection instructions, we've got the connection code in a few formats here. This authorization key, it extends quite a ways off to the right. That's going to be our API key in order to connect. So now let's head over to Slack. If you don't have the Delphi application installed in Slack, there's a link for that. We'll throw it in the resources section. We'll go ahead and go over to Slack, and we've got our Delphi app installed. It's a very simple installation. The first thing that we'll be presented with is to configure Delphi here in Slack. So we can input our client. Oh yeah.
Tony, may I interrupt you for a second? It looks like you've shared your browser window, but your Slack window is not showing. So probably resharing the window may help.
Good idea. Thanks, Igor. All right, I will go ahead and share the full screen so we can get the back and forth here. Awesome. All right, so we are, once we're connected to Slack, connecting Delphi to Slack, the first thing we'll do is put in our client ID and our API key. So you can grab these from Michael, and there's a few other configuration options here, like what David was talking about earlier. The second thing you'll do is connect to Cube. So you've got, pick a connection, you pick Cube, and you'll put in that REST API endpoint as well as the API key from that connection window. Great. So the first thing you can do is you can actually click on this messages tab and message the bot directly. Or if you want to open it up and not be selfish and share it with other folks, you can create a channel or add it to any other channels just by going at Delphi. And then we will add Delphi to the channel. So Delphi starts off with an introduction here and the data catalog that it's connected to. Your data catalog could be much larger, and you could use Delphi to query all kinds of different things across your all kinds of data in your organization. For now, we just have that one sales view that we're connected to. And here we've got some of those metrics like the average order value, the quantity, the orders count, and some of those dimensions that I showed you earlier. So here we can say Delphi. It's important to hit the use the app's handle. So otherwise it just ignores all the conversation that's not tagged. How many orders came from the city of Austin by month? And let's see if we can get some Delphi magic going on here. One of the things that we can watch for when Delphi is running is here in the query history. These queries are popping through. This is the format that Delphi is, format of the query that Delphi is writing. You can see it's including the city, the order date by month, and the order count. It's filtering to Austin. So let's see if Delphi came back with anything. Great. So we've got a list of the data for each of the months, order count by month, and then a nice chart here to show us visually, what's going on here. So let's do one more just to demonstrate one of the metrics that we're using. So Delphi, show me the average order value by city in 2022. And again, this is average order value. This is as defined across your organization. So you don't have to define this once per tool, once per data set, once per analyst. This is a formula that lives in your semantic layer and can be shared across all of your data applications. So after this comes back, we'll pass it over to Michael for hopefully more of a peek behind the curtain and see how Delphi actually comes up with this stuff. It's magic, so to speak. So great, here we have average order value by city. Awesome, well, that's all I got. I'll pass it over to Michael now.
All right, thanks, Tony. I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we can dive a little bit deeper into how Delphi works and some of the cool things it can do. And just to introduce myself quickly, so my name is Michael Irvin. I'm one of the other, I'm the other co-founder of Delphi Labs. Cool. All right, so I'm here in the same channel that Tony was using in Slack. And one thing I want to highlight is we do really recommend using Delphi in a public channel. It's nice to have it, you know, you can, your business users can ask questions, but also have, say, the data team or people who really know the data in there as well to help them out if they get stuck and, you know, kind of have this multiplayer experience. And so let me show you a few more cool things that Delphi can do. I'll also talk a little bit more about how Delphi works. And so we can ask Delphi kind of a simple question. How much did we sell in 2023 by state? Now, very cool. It looks like Tony has already asked this at some point and said, yeah, that answer we got looked good. I'm going to validate that. And so we're displaying this previously validated question so that your users feel comfortable knowing that, you know, maybe someone in the data team has already run this, they've already validated it. And so I can just go ahead and run this again. I'm going to get a safe, trusted answer. All right, very cool. So again, we got our list here, sales quantity by state for 2023. We got our chart. Awesome. One thing you can do is, you know, if you liked what it did or if you didn't like what it did, you can give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down so that Delphi can learn what goes well and what doesn't and get better in the future. So in this case, I actually wanted to look at revenue, not like the number of sales. And so I'm going to say, hey, Delphi, actually, I wanted sales. I think it should know to use revenue based on that. Awesome. All right, we've got our revenue table now. Like we mentioned before, you can do a few different things here. If this is something you want to see every week, for example, you can schedule it. Revenue by state, say, just say something like Monday mornings. You don't have to be that precise. It'll figure something out. And then maybe I just want to send this and send it to David. Actually, maybe David wants to know this. Cool. All right, I've scheduled my query. Now David's going to get queries forever on Monday mornings going forward. You can also download it if you want to explore the data deeper in something like Google Sheets or Excel. No, we don't only have to ask questions like, you know, show me a metric X by Y dimension. You can get a lot more complicated than that. kind of using natural language, talking like a normal person would. And so you can ask, just a question about like what actually happened in the real world. So something like, did we make more in New Jersey, or I think that's Mississippi this month? Someone, while we're waiting on this, someone asked in the Q&A, how do you unschedule a message from Delphi? And that's easy to do. When you actually get a scheduled message, there's a button on there to stop it from sending anymore. All right, very cool. So I asked if we made more in New Jersey or Mississippi this month, and Delphi told me, yeah, revenue was higher in New Jersey. Gave me a nice little chart too. So let's ask, let's ask something maybe even a little more ambiguous, right? Let's say, Delphi, who are our most frequent customers? And if you kind of go back to what Tony was showing in the data model, frequency of customers, not exactly something that we had. And so Delphi's going to have to do some work to figure out, okay, exactly what do we mean by this? How do I interpret this in the right way? And it should be done here in a few seconds. I'll make a note while we're waiting on this of kind of how Delphi works behind the scenes. Cool, so it did finish. But thinking about how Delphi works behind the scenes, right, we're really integrating your semantic layers with large language models like the ones developed recently by OpenAI and Anthropic. So you may have heard of GPT-4 as well as ChatGPT. Right now, we're connected actually to a few different language models. And this is using some things like GPT-4 to generate the query, and then Claude, which is a chat model from Anthropic, to summarize it. We also are developing our own large language model that we can host in our own infrastructure, because we know some people are very conscious about privacy. You don't necessarily want to be sending even metadata about your business and your metrics to a company like OpenAI. And so that's something that we're thinking a lot about and developing kind of our own in-house solutions for running these as well. Cool. So it did figure out who our most frequent customers are, the ones with the most orders. And again, gave me a really nice chart. The last thing I want to show you here on Slack is kind of how you can dig in deeper to a query. And so you can tell Delphi, show me just the top 15. Right, because that's a ton of people. I don't need all of those. And here we have the top 15. Another thing you can do, right, is if, maybe you don't want a bar chart like this. I know our favorite chart type as data people is pie charts. So I'm going to ask Delphi for a pie chart here. Again, let's remember to tag Delphi. The point of that is, if you and a colleague are having a back and forth in the thread talking about the data, we don't want Delphi to just be like randomly responding to you. And so if you're working in a channel or in a thread, you want to tag Delphi to make sure that Delphi knows you're asking it a question rather than just, talking to your colleagues. Very cool. All right, and made me a nice little pie chart here of our top 15 customers. One other thing I want to show you is that you can use Delphi not just in Slack, but we're working on other ways to make use of Delphi. We know that not every team is on Slack. Others use things like Microsoft Teams or primarily communicate through email. And so we're building out other ways to use Delphi, including a standalone web application. That way, even if you're not on a platform that we support like Slack, you can still use Delphi. And so I'm bringing up my chart here. Again, you can kind of go back and forth and edit. And so if I am hovering over here, it's showing me like the total number of orders for these customers. But I can say, show me the percentages. All right, so now we have our percentages. If I, wanted to know, okay, of the top 15 customers, our biggest customer makes up 11% of those sales. Awesome, good to know. The other thing you can do in our standalone app is start running a new query. Right now, this is connected to, that same Cube demo sales data set that we've been working with. And so maybe I want to know how are weekly orders trending this year? We don't have kind of the same full chat back and forth experience in the standalone app right now, but we're actively building out the standalone application. If folks are interested in using that rather than Slack or interested in using in like other ways of using Delphi than Slack, definitely feel free to get in touch with us. I know a lot of folks who use Cube for embedded analytics and customer-facing things. And so one thing that a lot of people have been asking us about is either API access or being able to embed, this application or components of it, like this chart component, in their own applications. And so that's something that we are working on too. Happy to talk to you about that if you're interested. Cool. All right, and we have our weekly orders trend. Going back to Slack, I'll just end here with a little more detail into how you can work with Delphi. So there's a few things we can do here. You can set a channel to notify if a user needs help. Typically, this is like the data team's channel or something. You can also, if you're really sensitive about making sure that a query is validated and confirmed before your end users see it, you can make sure that it gets sent to those people, that data team channel, before you run the query. We also have options around, do you want those plain English answers? Do you want the charts, or do you just want us to return like a CSV of the data? Again, if you're not, if you're someone who cares a lot about privacy, don't want the data returned by queries sent to, OpenAI or Anthropic, one of our large language model providers, that's a really good option for you, because if you choose this, just return the data table, then no actual data ever passes through their systems, just metadata. And then, you can also choose the language model. So right now we're on kind of our recommended mix of GPT-4 and Claude. If you prefer one over the other, you can choose one. For example, GPT-4 will give kind of really detailed answers. Sometimes it's actually a little too wordy, but they tend to be, very high quality. They're also slower. And here is also where you can choose the new self-hosted option that we offer. All right, if you have any more questions about Delphi, feel free to ask them in the Q&A in a little bit or reach out to us. But with that, I will stop sharing my screen and move over to
I think to me, right?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you, Michael. I think that this was a great demo. And yeah, we've got yet another question. So this is a fair exchange, right? So we've got some questions for you, and that's great that the questions are flowing to us to the Q&A part. So please keep doing this because we still have plenty of time and we'll be taking these questions shortly. So the question that I would like to ask right now is whether you'd like to allow non-technical users, like end users or customers, to access data using an interface like Delphi after everything that you just saw. Yeah, we're very curious about this. And this is exactly the moment where we'd love to jump into the Q&A session, and yeah, keep posting these questions, and we'll approach it like this. I'll be reading the questions and maybe suggesting who might be the best one to answer because, well, why not? So let's start by the first one that I have here on my screen. So Siamak wonders, what is the pricing model of Delphi? This is a good one. So David, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're pretty young company, so we're still learning about pricing. We have some ideas about pricing per question, and when we say question, it's that thread that you see in Slack. It's not each individual adjustment. So we would price on like a tiered basis. Like for example, a certain amount of dollars would give you a certain fixed number of questions per month. Like that's the way we think about pricing. Yeah, so reach out if you want to talk about that.
Great. And what I would add to this is that, well, you never asked about this, but still, you can certainly use Delphi with the free tier that we have in Cube Cloud. So this is a great option if you'd like to start modeling your data with a semantic layer and explore whether Delphi is an option for you as an interface. So the next question is, what technologies or frameworks is Delphi developed with? So yeah, if there's a way to use it but not on Slack, I think that was partially covered, but still, Michael, do you want to take this one?
Yep, yeah, so I guess I kind of preempted this one, but can talk about it some more. So yeah, if you're not on Slack, we're building out other ways to use Delphi, right? We know some folks are on Microsoft Teams or have other ways to kind of to do this like chat at their companies. And so those are things we're thinking about. If you are particularly interested in, for example, a Microsoft Teams integration, feel free to get in touch. The standalone application is another option that's still in progress, but coming very soon. And so that's an option. If you are using Teams, for example, and don't want to wait on us building out like a Microsoft Teams client, you can always just interact with Delphi via the web application too. From like a more technical side, the way that it's developed is, it's all based on a API that's working to translate essentially your questions to Cube or another semantic layer, get them answered, generate charts, do things like that. That API is available to folks as well. We have some API documentation that we can share. And we're big fans of kind of the TypeScript and Node.js React type ecosystem here. And so we do have a Node.js SDK that people can use as well if you want to build on top of our API.
Yeah, this is great. And next question that we have is, does one need to add some annotations or comments in order for the AI to understand the measures and dimensions within the data model? Or do you just need to just provide your data model with everything that's in there, and the AI would infer the model from that? And still, I guess it's partially demonstrated today, but I'd love if you, Michael, can take this one as well.
Yeah, for sure. So the best way to make Delphi really understand your data, actually there's two things, right? So one is when you're setting up the Cube data model, like the person who asked the question mentioned, if you use labels or field names that are like human readable and understandable and descriptive about what is this field, what does it mean, then that's super helpful, right? Think about understanding the data model kind of the same way that like a person who's looking at your data catalog would. And so one thing I would like specifically call out here is that the field name itself doesn't have to be, the most human readable thing, right? We understand sometimes like you may not have a ton of control over like what are the names of the columns in your database. They may come from strange systems that name things all kinds of ways. Even if you have one with kind of a weird name, but it's labeled in the right way with what it actually represents, then that's something that Delphi can understand. The other thing I would call out is, again, using kind of that up and down vote feature that we have, so that Delphi can learn how does the things that the fields are actually named in your data model map to like the way that people ask questions and the way people talk about the data in sort of the real world.
Great, and what I would love to add to here that, well, Cube as a semantic layer provides a number of options to describe your data. So not only the things we just mentioned, but you've got your descriptions for measures and dimensions, and also what you can do is provide some metadata with the dimension. So I would say this is the advanced stuff, the stuff that you probably find if you dig into the docs. So good luck with that. The next question that we have here is whether Delphi can be used just with the Cube Cloud or Delphi can be connected to any Cube instance. And this is something that I would be happy to take myself. So Delphi would happily work with any Cube deployment, any Cube installation. And because, well, it interfaces using the APIs that the Cube provides, and those APIs, they're present in any Cube deployment. So feel free to use whatever Cube semantic layer you have, whether it's self-hosted or whether it's in Cube Cloud. However, I would recommend you to at least give Cube Cloud a try and get started with there, because some of the tools that Tony showed during his demo, like the query history UI, the query history screen and the playground and the interactive ID that allows you to collaborate cross team, and also if you change your data model to make sure that you can test those changes before they go live and make sure that it doesn't break your downstream tools, including Delphi. This is all the things that we've built into Cube Cloud, so at least give it a try. But yeah, Delphi can work with any Cube deployment that you have. Okay, the next one we got here. So yeah, this is a very cool one, data privacy. So the question is, does any company data ever go to Delphi or any other third party like OpenAI? And then let probably you, Michael, answer this. But before, I'll probably expand this question. So does any company data ever go to Cube? This might be the first part of it, and then the data consumers. So the thing is, Cube is a semantic layer. It doesn't replicate or copy your data, but what it does, it queries your upstream data sources. There is a caching layer within Cube. Then given the configuration that you provided, will transform data into intermediate representation that can be used to serve your queries faster, but that would be a condensed subset of data that is stored securely and that you have full control over. And then when the data is served to downstream tools like Delphi, something else happens, right? So Michael, what about the data privacy on the Delphi side?
Yeah, so the data privacy on the Delphi side is actually almost exactly the same, right? So, first thing, it's something we know is really important and we take very seriously. And so the way we think about company data is that just like Cube, we're not, replicating or storing your own company data, right? We're not, when you run a query, we're not storing the results of that. We're not, replicating your data warehouse or your semantic layer data into like some separate system. So when a query is run, it basically passes through Delphi so that we can display the data to you, but we don't log or store that on our end. We do log and store metadata around, your metric definitions, your cubes, stuff like that. How a metric is defined, what it's called, right? And so we need that to make the system work. But any actual data, right, like revenue numbers, stuff like that, we're never going to log or store. In terms of sending it to third parties like OpenAI, so I showed this feature in the setup, right, where you can basically turn that on or off depending on what you want. We know some people obviously don't want to do that, but if you want to use your data to generate charts and stuff like that, then you can also choose to. So that's one thing. OpenAI's privacy policy in particular, I'll just mention, they specifically do not use the data that's passed through for training models. They don't use it for anything other than abuse and fraud monitoring purposes. They only store it for 30 days and then they delete it. And so we're happy to, pass you on any documentation around that you need. And then the last part is, if you're just very concerned about sending any data at all to companies like OpenAI or Anthropic, that's why we're building out our own language model that we can use as the back end of Delphi as well, so that that's the only place that ever sees your data.
Yeah, this is great, and this was a very complete answer. So proceed to the next question. So it is a very technical one. I like it a lot. So the question is, the delay in the interface seems to be pretty significant. I guess this is the delay between the question you ask and the insight you get, for example, in Slack. And the question is where the most of the delay coming from. It is a lag on the API calls to OpenAI, or is it on the Cube side, and just that stuff. So I can take a part of it. So obviously the data is served from Cube, and when the caching is not configured within Cube, you're just querying your upstream data source, and depending on the nature of the data source, you'll get something like from 0 to substantial number of second delays, depending on the complexity of queries, depending on the volume of data. Like, for example, if you're running against BigQuery or Snowflake data warehouse, this might be like 2 seconds per query or something along those lines. And what the preferred and recommended way is to actually configure caching in Cube, not only in-memory cache, but also pre-aggregations, which is a very powerful feature that in general allows you to drop the query latency for Cube to tens or early hundreds milliseconds. So your queries, regardless of the volume of data or regardless of their complexity, will be processed, say, in 50 milliseconds or maybe 250 milliseconds, but very rarely more than that. And this is on the Cube side. And I'd like, Michael, you to take what happens on the Delphi side.
Perfect, yeah. So, right, any latency will pretty much come from one of two places, right? One is either running the query against your database or data warehouse, and then the other one is from the API calls and the inference that the large language model is doing. So that's another reason why we have the language model configurable. So I didn't demo this, but some of them are much faster than others. And so, for example, if I had chosen Claude or if I had chosen the Delphi model, you would be getting answers kind of at least twice as fast from what we demoed. And so that's something, you know, we like to leave it up kind of to the person implementing to know for our business, what's the trade-off here between speed versus the other things you get out of the models.
Yeah, in my personal experience, using Delphi is generally much faster than what the time that I personally need to kind of open the BI tool of my choice, you know, find the right dashboard. Just recalling what the dashboard was named, you know, it's a daunting task. So it's definitely faster in my experience. Okay, so at this point of time, I'd like to show the final slide that we have because it has some great links. And after that, we'll continue taking your questions as they flow. And we can even run over the time limit, no worries. If you'd like to stay with us, just do it. So this is the final slide that we have. And maybe in a few seconds, it'll appear on your screens. So some things that we think might be good action items after this webinar event. So definitely give Delphi a try, sign up at delphihq.com and see in which way it can augment the experience that your end users have. Also, obviously use Cube Cloud to set up your free Cube deployment and set up your semantic layer to be used with Delphi. We've got a pretty good blog post that David and I co-authored a couple of weeks ago about Delphi and Cube, so feel free to check that. It has a cool video, I think, so yeah, worth trying. There are some docs on how you can connect Delphi to Cube, so this is also worth checking. And obviously, if you're curious and you're to try yourself how Delphi works, feel free to join the Slack community here at Cube at slack.cube.dev, because there is a channel in there, random Delphi demo, that you can try today, just right now. And last but not the least, there's a lot of cool stuff on the Delphi development and new features in Delphi Substack. Feel free to tune into that. And if you're curious enough, you might also want to find the Substack where David writes his newsletters. David is quite a prolific writer, and I especially liked very much the four-part or five-part series on this. Okay, it's 5, yeah, on the semantic layers. So really good read if you're into that topic. So yeah, this is the last thing that I'm gonna recommend. Okay, and with that, let's jump into the rest of the questions. So there is a really deep question about GPT-4, so I'll just read it for you, Michael, right? So the question is, so someone tried writing GPT-4 and it gave like 10 rows, understood the schema and data types and made possible questions around that. And the question is whether the AI layer provides any additional intelligence or not. Yeah.
So I think the question is really around, does connecting it to Cube and the semantic layer instead of just going directly to a database provide additional intelligence? And our perspective is that it does, especially for like large business scale or enterprise scale data sets, right? Typically, the data sets and data warehouses that David and I have worked with in our careers, like, you can have hundreds of tables, thousands of columns, they have all kinds of crazy names. And so connecting it to a thing like, connecting that to something like Cube is a really good way to, define consistent metrics, define consistent dimensions, define how tables relate to each other in a consistent way, which leads to, something like Delphi being able to give much better and especially more consistent results rather than trying to, figure out everything on the fly from the database schema.
Yeah, great. And there's one question that that I've seen repeatedly. So is there a way to integrate Delphi into a web application? And what's your folks' take on that?
Yep.
Michael?
So that's possible. We have an API that we can give you access to, and we have documentation around that we can send, as well as a Node.js SDK. If you're using something that's not Node.js, for example, you're using Python or PHP or something. We don't have SDKs for those yet, but either you can just go directly to the API, or those are things that we're, thinking about building in the future too.
That is great. And I think there's a chance to let you, David, elaborate on something that you already, I guess, touched in the presentation. So the question is, can Delphi be used directly against a Postgres data source, or does it need to go through Cube? I think you've got a take on that. David? Do we still have David with us? Probably not.
Oops, yeah, I thought David had to leave, but I still see his video, but it looks like he's frozen. So
okay.
Anyway, I can speak to that. So yeah, that kind of goes back to the previous question about connecting to directly to a database. If you are working with a fairly simple database, you may not need something like a semantic layer. We think it's still a good idea, but if you do just want to connect to kind of a smaller database, something like Postgres, we don't offer that right now, but it's something that we're exploring, so feel free to talk to us. There was also a question around whether the Delphi chatbot can be white labeled, and that's something that we're also happy to talk to folks about.
Amazing. So this is so great that that so many product ideas are flowing through the questions right now. Yeah, I think that this is definitely worth kind of exploring, trying, productizing and bringing to the end users that we are all working for, right? So that was great. Let's wrap up our questions part at this point, and let's be wrapping up our webinar. Thanks everyone for attending, and again, feel free to give Delphi and Cube a try. And at this point, I'm taking this over to you, Nathan.
All right, thank you everybody for joining. That was great discussion. We're super excited about this integration and building our relationship with Delphi. Make sure to tune in next week. We have a data modeling workshop, so a special webinar with Artyom and Igor next week on May 31st. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, folks. Bye.